BBC One Wales, the news and sport with Peter Sissons and Helen Rollason.
A man has been charged with yesterday's killings inside the Capitol building in Washington. President Clinton has called the murder of two policemen a moment of savagery at the front door of American civilization. MPs recommend that RUC recruits should not be members of marching organisations, including the Orange Order. And South Africa's batsmen again refused to buckle after England land early blows. Good evening. The man arrested after the murder of two police officers in the Capitol building in Washington yesterday has been charged with murder. The accused, Russell Weston, is himself in critical condition in hospital with gunshot wounds. President Clinton paid tribute to the dead policemen, saying they'd laid down their lives for their fellow citizens. America's lawmakers have insisted that despite the breach of security, their doors must stay open to the public.
Tributes to two fallen policemen on the steps of the US Capitol, many placed by the tourists who flocked to this best-loved symbol of American democracy 24 hours after the murderous attack. Americans have been horrified by the bloodshed, but not intimidated.
My daughter was afraid to come this morning because she was afraid something would happen, and my husband told her, no, we had a right to come, and we had an obligation to come because, it's our building.
Investigators have now pieced together what happened. The gunman came up to the document door entrance of the Capitol. When he tried to bypass a metal detector, he was challenged by a police officer. That officer was gunned down. Under police fire, the assailant reached the outer door of the Republican whip's office. There was a gunfight with another policeman, and the attacker was seriously wounded. The corridors, which had been raked with gunfire yesterday, were a somber place today. This is where Special Agent John Gibson stopped the gunman outside the office of Republican Tom DeLay, who today paid tribute to his savior.
He was a very dear friend. He was simply the finest man that I've ever known. He deeply loved his job. And he died so that my staff and the public and I could live.
Yesterday's images of women and children fleeing for their lives, of politicians diving for cover, won't easily be forgotten by Americans. But the question remains, what defense is there against a gunman prepared to lose his life in a desperate attack? The alleged assailant, Russell Weston, lived in a remote cabin in Montana. He was known to the Secret Service. He'd made threats against the president, and his neighbors had seen signs of mental instability.
He just got so paranoid, you wouldn't know what he was talking about. It was kind of scary.
Russell Weston's vehicle was towed away by police. They've charged the critically wounded Weston with murder. President Clinton condemned what he called a moment of savagery. He saluted the two fallen police officers and reminded Americans of the importance of the U.S. Capitol.
That majestic marble building is the symbol of our democracy and the embodiment of our nation. We must keep it a place where people can freely and proudly walk the halls of their government.
Officials may eventually move the security checkpoints for tourists away from the Capitol building itself. But for now, the focus is on the heroism of the two policemen who died in the line of duty. Admiration for their sacrifice has united all Americans. Stephen Sacker, BBC News, Washington.
It's expected that a report by MPs into the Royal Ulster Constabulary will recommend that new recruits should not be members of the Orange Order or any other marching organisation exclusive to one religious tradition. The report into the RUC by the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee is due to be published on Monday.
Irish Republicans protested outside police stations in Belfast today, demanding the disbandment of the RUC. The latest recommendations are nothing like so radical, but they're guaranteed to cause controversy nevertheless. The Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee has been examining the recruitment and composition of the RUC, which remains more than 90% Protestant. The force's chief constable told the committee it could take a generation for that balance to change. It's understood the committee is recommending that new recruits to the force shouldn't be members of exclusively Protestant organisations like the Orange Order or exclusively Catholic ones like the Ancient Order of Hibernians.
This is a question of imagery, and the image is that Orangism and other organisations do reflect on people a sectarian image, and that is baggage which a police force should not be carrying with it.
But the Orange Order is unimpressed. It also doesn't like another suggestion, that the Union flag should no longer fly over police stations on July the 12th, the biggest day of the Protestant marching season.
My concern is that this may be discriminatory, and I think the RUC and the police authority will have to study this recommendation very, very carefully indeed, and consider carefully the implications of such a recommendation, because obviously it will affect a lot of people in Northern Ireland.
Any action on the RUC is likely to wait until next year, when an independent commission reports on the future of policing in Northern Ireland. Mark Devonport, BBC News, Belfast.
A West Midlands couple are recovering in hospital tonight after being injured in an arson attack on their home in Walsall early this morning. Army experts were called in to deal with a homemade bomb that was found at the scene by firefighters.
When the fire broke out in the early hours of the morning, the family had to jump from a first-floor window to escape from the flames. It's thought petrol was used to start the blaze. Then, as fire crews were cleaning up, they discovered the explosive device hidden among rubbish outside the house. 2 thunder flashes, used by the army to simulate explosions, were wired up to a battery.
It's like a large, dangerous firework, I suppose, in simple terms, which could have been quite dangerous to the occupants had it gone off, and quite dangerous to the structure of the building, I understand.
Surrounding homes were evacuated and the area cordoned off as a bomb disposal team moved in. A controlled explosion was needed to make the device safe. The occupants of the house have been named as Karen and Peter Addis and their 8-year-old daughter Charlotte. They've been treated in hospital for minor injuries and the effects of breathing in smoke. The police investigation is continuing, but so far there's been no indication about why their home became the target for such an attack. Peter Gould, BBC News.
In Yugoslavia, there's been heavy fighting in the Serbian province of Kosovo, where ethnic Albanians are pressing for autonomy. The Serbian authorities have launched a series of tank and artillery attacks on the Drenica region, one of the main strongholds of the rebel Kosovo Liberation Army. Our correspondent Mark Leahy reports from there.
A mortar team fires as the Serbs move on to the attack. These forces were retaking a key road after months when it's been the KLA that's held the initiative, controlling much of the countryside. But today the Yugoslav army and police launched a series of attacks in several areas. Tanks rolled into the Drenica area from several directions, targeting parts of a region vital to the Kosovo Liberation Army. The Serb offensive follows several recent reverses for the KLA after a long period of success. Observers say they're now on the back foot in the face of Serb firepower, but defeating a guerrilla army that can melt into the countryside won't be easy. The main victims are the ever-increasing numbers of refugees, and if the Serbs seem, as they have so often before, to be targeting civilian areas, it's bound to rekindle calls for international intervention. Last week it was the KLA that was on the offensive, but they were defeated, and now it's the Serbs' turn to attack. And after several weeks on the defensive, they're using their heavier weapons to assault one of the KLA's heartlands, posing one of the toughest tests yet for the rebel army. Mark Leahy, BBC News, Drenica, Kosovo.
A nurse in France who was arrested after the deaths of 30 terminally ill patients in her care has been released on bail. 28-year-old Christine Malèvre is alleged to have killed the elderly patients at the François Quesnay hospital near Paris. Some reports say that the woman told police she killed the patients at their own request or that of their families. The Queen should lose most of her remaining constitutional powers, according to a report from an influential think tank. The report, which is still being finalised, is being prepared by the research group Demos, which has close links with the Labour leadership.
The monarchy's gone through many changes in recent years, and there have been calls for an end to the Queen's role in ceremonial occasions like the state opening